Hey Candy. Hey Sam. I just went live, so I'm waiting to see how this all shakes out. So I'm gonna turn the brightness up on this a little bit. Whoops. Let's not do that though. No. Okay. Can you turn the? I don't know how. I'm not entirely certain if. Oh, there we go. I'm not used to. I guess the brightness is all the way up. Just kidding. Okay. I'm still learning the whole. The whole iPad thing, I guess. I can't figure out words today either. See who we got. Christine, Tanya, freaking freezing Canada. I am so sorry it's cold. It's not really cold here. It's not really warm either. It's just sort of like blah. Good afternoon. Ooh. Candy, well then I'm not going to be as salty right now as I was in that video. You're trying to watch videos on YouTube for Procreate, Becca? No, dude. I've watched some to find the answer to the one thing, but I get really frustrated when I see people do things and they do it and it looks so easy. And I know I'm probably responsible for that kind of thing too. When I'm feeling frustrated, seeing someone else do it and have it look simple just pisses me off even more, which is my just contrary ass nature. Hey, Deb. So what I'm going to do today is, you guys saw, if you saw my Instagram or you watched the February bullet journal setup, that I did this style right here of lettering, which is, and I showed it on Instagram and people did not see the faint pencil line and they thought I was fucking magic. And I was like, no, I'm not magic. I just use a pencil. So I'm going to do some of those. Maybe I'll do your guys' names. And if they come out looking nice, I can save them and put them on the Patron page for you to use if you want to. But basically, I just want to kind of show you how I do it, which I've shown some of you before if you were in the Wild 30. But I'm going to kind of show you, and the reason I'm using this is so I don't have to erase. I can just delete the layer, but it's the same concept. Okay, let me see. D's Dazzling Designs. Oh wait, is that Denise? That's Denise, isn't it? I can see your icon picture. Yeah, that's Denise. I'm freaking suave at seeing some things. And then Becca, the stylus that I have for the regular iPad that I gave to my daughter, I can't remember the name of it. If I can figure out, maybe I still have the box in here. I was stashing it. This is the one. The pencil is the one that I've used before with the regular iPad. And aside from the fact that I found the rubbery part of the nib to be a little bit too, my heavy hand kind of smushed it, but it worked really nicely. But it was like a $50 stylus, which is still cheaper than this shit. So, no magic. Hey, Rose. Hey, Jessica. Hey, B. Okay, happy little homemaker. I know who you are, too, but I'm brain farting on it right now. Hi, Linda. Ooh, that sounds nice. Hi, Anna. Hi, Nicole. Jen, thank you. Okay. Now, I'm not great when you see a screen name that's different than a regular name. Okay, so I'm going to be working in layers here today so that you can see. Actually, let me change the size of this. Let me do a new, do 4x6. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to work on layers on this, but if you're doing this with Procreate, you can work with layers. And if you're just doing this on paper, I generally utilize just a pencil. And I've said this before, you want to go with an H pencil. Now, you don't want to get this is a 4H and this usually works fine for me because because it's a harder lead, it draws a little fainter and it's easier to erase. The B side of pencils, if you go from H in one way and B in the other way, are softer and they can be harder to pull off, to erase. But the harder if you go with an 8H, especially if you have heavy hand, you're going to leave a dent on the paper. So a 2 or a 4H generally works fine for doing a very, very light pencil line. And then I have my Gigante eraser, but you can erase with whatever eraser you've got. But I am working for my bottom layer, and I'm just going to use, just to kind of give it like a pencil-y kind of look, I'm going to use this pencil calligraphy. Whoa, that's a little bit darker than I want. A little bit. There. Okay, so I'm going to use this pencil calligraphy brush from the Dawn Nicole Designs to show you the pencil side of things. Tanya, not Tanya. Yay! Okay, well, that's good to know. If I mispronounce it, I apologize. Again. Hi, Ida. Hi, Jana. Hey, Alex. Lakina's here. Caroline's here. Taylor is here. Julie is here. Sweet. So, I've just heard my stomach growl too, because after this it's lunchtime. So we will start, and I'm going to start, because I mispronounced her name, I'm going to start with Tanya. So what I do is I write it in cursive, and I try to leave some now this is a little darker, like I would prefer to have it be fainter than this if I was doing it on paper, because it would be easier to erase, but I want you to be able to see this. And I'm trying to not make it narrow. I'm just working. Now, one area that you may want to be careful of is like right here. See how there's this gap in the A's, because that's how I naturally write cursive. I will sometimes go and just close that gap. It still looks like an A, because when you have a gap like that and you have to, when you're tracing around it and you'll go inside it, it just starts to make things a little bit more tricky. You want to avoid, when you're learning how to do this, you want to avoid as many tricky spots as possible. So I'll try and point them out as I work. Okay? Hey, Amy. Yeah, your boss left. And so here's the T. So this is how I start. I write out the cursive. I try and make the letters have as much inside space as possible so that there's room to trace. And I try to avoid any situations where things can get a little tricky. So then I'm just adding another layer to make this easier on me. But if you were working with paper, you would just go around this and erase after the fact. So I'm just gonna, whoa. That is way too thick. That is also, and I just spit on my fucking iPad because that's how I roll, apparently. This monoline is way too fat. I need a skinnier monoline. Do I have one in here? I think I do. Yeah, that'll work, but I want a little bit thicker than that. No, not that thick. There we go. Good enough. Okay. So here's how I start. Thank you, Melanie. Okay, so here's how I start. I usually start along the bottom. That's just my preference. I don't think that there is necessarily a situation where you have to do either. Now, what I try to do, I'm going to go back to this for a second and lower the opacity of this just a little bit. There we go. Now I feel better because now it stands out a little bit more. Okay, so I try to leave about the same amount of space, but it's going to be difficult to do that in some places. What you're looking for is just to try and keep things looking even. You don't want to have like areas where it's all like fluffy in one spot and skinny in another spot. So you want to try and make the amount of space you leave from where the inside line is to the outside line, kind of like what I've talked about with block lettering before. Now, when it comes to something like this where the inside of the T is, I just tend to go a little bit up and just, I don't want it to be all the way exaggerated because it's harder to see. All right. Now, if I miss your question, if you have any questions while I'm doing this, I'll look up in a minute, but I'm just going to follow around. So there is how I'm getting to the N. Now, when you're doing something like an N, you're going to be going on up into it. That is, I'm going to start that over again so I can do the smooth line. Try to do this all in one smooth motion, at least for the bottom. Now I'm following it again, just trying to stay as relatively even as possible. Now, when you get to a situation like a Y, you can go all the way up, but it's the same kind of tricky thing with the A's if the head stayed open. So what I tend to do is I go a little and then I bring it back down again. Because to me, in those tricky crevasses, it works better to just under-exaggerate than over-exaggerate. I don't like where that A is going, but that's okay. So I'm following it around, again, trying to stay as even as possible. But if it's not perfect, it's not perfect. Sometimes you just got to go with it when you're doing this and see how it turns out. I'm just trying to keep things from being way too disproportionate. If I can do that, I usually consider it a success. And so you work all the way around, right? Now your last task when you're doing something like this is to go inside and create your little spaces. Now, one of the things you'll notice with an A is if you do a perfect oval, sometimes it can be easy to not distinguish the A from like an O. So I try to add a little bit of definition along the edge, like, whoops. Let's try this again. Along the edge where the A like is created, because you know how like with an O everything is like very like smooth, but with an A there's usually like a little line on the edge. That's what I try to sort of suggest to make it so that it looks more like an A. And then with the Y I try to leave in a little bit of the point. So then what you would do if you had an eraser is you do that, and now as you can see right here is where I had the least amount of definition. This A came out more defined than this A. Now sometimes you can fix that by doing drop shadows. Other times you may not be able to fix it, but at least it'll look kind of cool. Now I added drop shadow, like imagine your light source is coming from this way. As usual for me, I do like the right and the right and the bottom. Also remember, I'm still a fucking noob at this iPad lettering thing. So if some of this looks a little janky, that's kind of what's happening. But you guys see sort of the process of it. Now I'm doing right and bottom for my drop shadows, where that's my favorite place to put them. If you look at anything I've drop shadowed, you'll almost always see that it's on the right and the bottom, because that's just, I've gotten to a point where I've gotten used to it and now it's not. So but that's how you do it. Hi, Jess. So that's the general idea. So I'm going to hang on to this guy and I'm going to start another one. And we'll do another name. We'll do Sam, because Sam's name has an S, and S's can be a massive pain in the ass when you're doing this kind of a thing. All right? Yes, Anna. For a drop shadow, so I'll just draw a bee. Bees are actually a great example of this because bees can confuse people. Here's a bee. Let me change my color here for a second. Okay? So if the light's coming from this direction, then your shadow is going to get cast down here and on this side. Like that's where the shadow is going to go cast. So when I would draw a shadow in, I would draw one here and here, because that's the right-hand side and the bottom. And then the bottom here looks like the top, but it's still the bottom. Like this is the top of this piece. This is the bottom. And then there's the right. And then this is the bottom of this piece. Whoops. This is a giant fucking mess. And then this is the right, if that makes sense. So even though this looks like the top, it's actually the bottom of that piece. But hi, you guys. Okay. So that's kind of I don't know if it's easy to explain it that way or not, but ultimately what you just need to think about is that the bottom in an inside piece, the top of that piece is actually the bottom of the bigger piece it is in. Or just think of it as the top if it makes it better for you. Okay. I feel like I might have just been more confusing than less. Okay. There we go. Let's do Sam, because I want to show S's in a couple of different ways. The bottom of solid pieces, not the bottom of open spots. Yeah, that's a good way to explain it. So I'm going to do Sam in two ways. Now, there's two ways you can do the S, and they both come with their own pitfalls. There's one, and there's other ways, but the way I write cursive, one of the two things you might see is this kind of S, which is one of my favorite cursive S's, or you might see an S like this, which you would argue might be the easier S, or you're going to get an S kind of a mixture of the two, where it's like a little less exaggerated. I don't recommend this one. Do not do one that's less exaggerated because, like I was saying, you need to have big open spaces to be able to do any of this with some amount of flexibility. Both of these can be done. Both of these can be done in a way that is stressful or a way that can work out. You just have to think about it while you're doing it. So I'm going to do Sam, and then I'm going to do Sam's name, and then I'm going to do Jess. And the reason I'm doing those two specifically to demonstrate this is because they are short names with S's in them, okay? So that's what I'm going to show you, because S can be one of those aforementioned pitfall letters. So we'll start with Sam. Notice I'm leaving big empty spaces so that it can be exaggerated. And see, that right there was a little close. So here. Okay. So there's Sam. Now I'm going to drop the opacity on this just a little bit. And I'm going to show you how to do around this and where it can get really touchy. Okay? I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to everybody's names today. If I can't, I will do another round of this at some point this month. But I'm just trying to demonstrate some ideas for right now because I want you to be able to do this on your own. And again, I'm doing this with the iPad, but I learned how to do this using pencil and paper. I just didn't want to take the time to erase right now because I hate that. All right. So I am going to start my letter right here because I'm going to get to this S in a minute. I want to just do the rest of it first. Now I'm going up a little further in the A because that may avoid some of the mushiness I had with the A in Tanya. I'm going around the M. M is actually nowhere near as bad as a lot of letters because even though it's a lot of bouncing, as long as you try to keep things kind of regular, it's pretty easy and it kind of comes out looking really cool. M actually is one of my favorites in this kind of style. All right. Yes, I will show Alex because their X is a pain in the ass in so many ways. So we're at the S, right? So I'm going to go into it this way. You can go either way, but this area right here, this inside area is going to be the trickiest, and I feel like I'd rather kind of smooth into it rather than starting from there. One of my favorite... Oh, you're welcome. That's why I tried to pick a different time. I'm trying to get better at timing things so that more people can try things, but... Okay, here we go. We're going around, and I'm following it. Now we're going into the scary part. So I just followed it, and I tried to not make this kind of like with the Y from before. I don't want to super make it tight here, but I also don't want to so under-exaggerate it that you can't see it. Now, then the biggest issue you're going to run into is making your inside, things. So remember to utilize the corners here where the corners would be, if they're like teardrops almost. See how this corner is here? So I added it there, and this corner is here. And then I do the same thing with my A. Now, there it is. And as you can see, this right here, you can see it looks a little bit disproportionate here from the holes to that. And one of the things that you can do, and this is gonna be kind of an not advanced, but this is an area where do this at your peril. If you're not used to it, you can follow the strokes. So you're stroking up, you're writing over. Actually, that's not what I wanted to do. Wrong way. So imagine you're writing it. And so you're writing it here, and then it goes around and goes over. So this would cross over that stroke. Whoops. This is going to look sloppy because I wasn't intending to do this, but so then it goes around. And see, that looks janky, but you can see how cool this would look if I had gone in there thinking about doing that. Having this look like the loop. I don't recommend doing this without doing a lot of practice, and don't ever go into that with pen first. Do that with pencil first before you try messing with that. But that's an idea of how to get that S. Stephanie, I totally feel the same way about Procreate. I'm not going to, I'm not going to give up on Procreate just yet, but it does give me the screaming memes. I'm not going to lie. Okay. So we're going to do Jess now, and we're going to do the other kind of S. Again, see how I'm leaving a lot of space in between each letter so I have room to play with it. Because that's when you're doing this, that's the biggest thing. Like, you can massage it. You can add drop shadows to it later. There are a lot of things you can do to kind of massage something into looking awesome, even if you screwed up. But when you're doing this style, you really have to have, like, the opening. You have to spread wide to accept the tracing around it. Because otherwise you're going to be, if you write something and it's a lot like this, when you try and trace around it, it's going to be really hard to read because there isn't any room for the letters to like be free, if this makes sense. Yes, I will do the letter B. Don't worry. I'm trying to get a few names that sort of encompass some of the shittiest letters. Not that they're bad letters. They're just harder with this technique. Okay. Anyway, now that I've had my dirty moment, let's move on to how you do this. So with the J, I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to start here. Now, this is where you see how I went inside and went straight up and brought it down. This is where you can run into problems with it not looking like an S if you're not careful. Now notice I'm trying to do this in one smooth line. I am of the philosophical opinion, this is a philosophical opinion, that you should just fucking go for it. Because every time you start and stop, you're leaving, like if I had done it like this, like, and then I stopped, and then I had to start again, you could see here, there's this little like situation because like you can't, it can be really difficult to get your lines to like meet up again. And so it's important that you just go for it and just try and go in one smooth line as fast as you can. And if you fuck it up, you fuck it up, but you'll get more confident doing it that way. So with the S's, I'm going to add these little situations in here. I'm going to add the E right about here. And my E also takes a teardrop form. And then for the inside of the J, we're going to put it right, And then when you get rid of that, you can see it looks like S's. It's just important. One of my favorite ways to make sure this stays looking like an S is when you're drawing down here. Don't draw straight down. Try and almost like flick it in just a little bit like it is here to sort of suggest the more exaggerated curve. And that helps define the S, if that makes sense. I'm looking at questions. You have to move very slowly. When you do this, my name looks like a small mountain range. Tanya, you do not need to ever apologize for being dirty. Okay, let's go with Alex so I can show you the X. Now I'm going to show you, I was just talking about how when you make an A like this, it can be tricky. I'm going to show you with Alex what that like feels like, what that looks like, so you can decide if it's something that, because I like how it looks when it's done, when I can do it right. When I can't do it right, I think it looks shitty. So let me show you. So I'm drawing my exaggerated letters. There's Alex. All right. I'm going to add this guy here, change my situation. All right. So I'm going to start from the bottom. Actually, I'm going to start from here. I'm going to go around. Okay, I'm going up into the X, coming down. Now the trick is, when you're drawing this section of the X, try and make sure that these lines and these lines and these lines and these lines, like, see what happens right there? Because I pulled my pen up. That's what happens. But what you want to make sure is that these look like they are all one piece, and this looks like it's all one piece with just no lines in it. If you draw it and you're like this, here's the inside X, and you draw it like this, you see how that looks like, not that part, but you see how it looks kind of off kilter? It's because they're not what's the word? Symmetrical with each other. So you want, this is the biggest area that you need to worry about with an X, is whether or not these corners here all feel like they go together. Now, when it comes to any sort of corners on this style, I do use corners. I do make them look kind of pointy, but I try not to be so harsh. I like to have like a soft harsh. Now that's where the A comes in, and you can see that it could come out looking like a C if you're not careful. You have to make sure that you leave yourself enough space to have a gap there while still curving around. So that means if you write an A like this to trace around it, this little space isn't big enough. You have to, like, purposefully, if you're going to do that, purposefully over-exaggerate the gap so that you have room to trace in and out of it. You're thinking about this almost like a road. You want to make sure that there's 2 lanes anywhere you go, you know, where there's room for both sides of it. And if there's not, then you're going to run into problems. And there you go. There's Alex. And you can see here, this E looks a little fat here and a little skinnier there, and that's where kind of the wonkiness comes in. But you can generally clean that up with a little bit of drop shadowing. Hey, Brittany. Okay. B, you wonder if I've done any shading or coloring with the program? Not yet, dude. I'm still trying to get used to the feel of it. I think that's next on my list of stuff to figure out. Is coloring and like ombre and shit like that. But I have not even delved into it. All I've used color for mostly is to distinguish between layers when I'm working on like a final, like, because I've been doing some like vector art with this for something, and using color to help me figure out which layer is which is kind of what I do when I'm drawing. If I'm drawing like in trying to draw a person, which I don't do very often, I'll use like a blue colored pencil to sketch in the lines before I put in the final whatever. But I haven't done any like coloring type shit with. Nicole, I am glad you're going to practice it. It's fun. It's just, it doesn't, like, I can't freehand this. I like to do, like, I don't know if I ever could freehand this, but I do like to practice it because I think it works really well. So I'm going to do, let's see here. I'm going to do Becca because it has both a B and a lowercase k, which is just a word that I hate on most levels in letter. So I'm going to use this with, okay, I'm going to make my B, trying to leave some space. This is going to be, let's try this over here. There we go. Okay, so there's the name. I'm going to shrink this down just a skosh. There we go. I guess that's the nice part about working with Procreate, is that you can do shit like that fairly easily without too much hassle. Brittany, I'm telling you, like, my husband made me buy this big one instead of the smaller one. I'm sure I could work with the smaller one too, but he made the point that generally when I do anything, like when I'm doing any sort of like lettering that I plan to scan in and like work with later, I get like a piece of cardstock and I'm just like big, because I figure working big is a lot more of a chance to be able to correct if like you need to like ink in, you know, like more drop shadows or line variation or whatever. So I work really big. And so he's like, so why wouldn't you get the big one? And I'm like, because it's more expensive. And he's like, don't be a fucking cheapskate. So that's the story of our relationship together, is him telling me to stop being such a cheapskate and me telling him, food is also nice. So, okay, here's the name. So I'm going to work, and I'm just going to start from like right about here because it's a corner. That's another nice like tip for this sort of lettering, or actually bubble lettering in general, is to start from a corner if it's going to be a hard corner. If it's going to be a rounded, like if it's like you're doing like this kind of bubble lettering where all the corners are round, then you don't want to start from a corner. You want to try and go over your line. If you're going to drop shadow, it could almost work really well to start where you're going to put the drop shadow, so that even if you have a little bit of like that funkiness there, when you put your drop shadow down, you'll be able to like cover that up. But when you're doing here, where you're actually utilizing some like sharp corners, it could be a good spot to start, because then you don't have to worry so much about where your line is going to begin. So with this K, I'm just sort of working my way under instead of like making any kind of flatness there. And I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. We'll see how it looks when it's all done. But I'm working my way around the A. Up to the K. And then down. And I'm adding, you'll notice right here with the K, if you see right there, I didn't just curve it. I kind of gave it a little bit of an angle, not very much, just a very slight angle, so that instead of it being smushy looking, it keeps kind of this line even and not have like a big like poofy transitional section. And then go up around here. And there you go. Add in your teardrops where they need to go. And there is Becca. Now see here, this little bump I did kind of made it fluffy. If I had bumped underneath it here a little bit more, that would have looked better. Like this. I'm just gonna fucking erase it because I'm already there. All right. Let's see if I can. It's not perfect, but you can see kind of the difference there. So that's a way to get around it in terms of practicing. As you're seeing, the biggest areas you come into, Christine, I'm going to do your name because you were saying you have some trouble with it being too wide. So, and that's a nice long name, so we're going to have to work a little bit smaller. Notice I did not add the loop on the S or the R. The more loops you have, the cooler and like fancier it looks if you can nail it. If you can't nail it, then you might want to consider not doing that. So I'm doing this a little bit simpler this time. That's way more of a T than I want. There we go. All right. So we're going to do this a little slowly because there's a lot going on. This is the longest name that we've tried so far. There are a lot of different ups and downs. There is an R, there is an S. There's a lot of potential for this shit to go a little bit wonky. So I reduced the size of my pen just a skosh. So I'm going to start from the C and I'm going to go around and I'm keeping it fairly tight. That's not what I wanted to do. I was going too low. See, I'm keeping it fairly tight to the edges. I'm not leaving as much space. So this is going to be a narrower letter. That went a little tighter than I wanted, but that's what she said. This isn't perfect, but that's not what we do here. But I'm keeping it as tight to the letter as I can. Now the trick is when you go back around, actually, oh, I'm gonna erase instead of trying to fuck with that, because I feel like if I tried to hit the undo button, I did a whole lot of that and it would piss me off, and that would be a sad thing. Do I want to go in there? Do I want to go in there? I didn't leave a lot of space. I'm gonna go in there. I'm just gonna keep it as tight as I can. Now see, that's where you can run into a problem. Notice that that's touching. Well, we'll go with it. I'm trying to stay as close as I can to not make it overly floofy. And then here we go, going into the C. And then when you do the insides, you also want to run those tight. You don't want to like have them be all super, because that's an area that you can run into a lot of problems, is if you run really tight to the edges, but then your inside like holes are super small. And so you've blown any chance that you have of it looking super tight. And then I keep saying super tight too, that's inappropriate. And see that, this A, I think I should have left more space there. But other than that, you can see how this can look without as much space in it. Kegel tight lettering. I'm glad to help. What size page am I choosing to practice on? This is a 4x6 from the Procreate. And the reason why is just because it's when I pull it out, they're going to be a lot smaller. Normally I work on the screen size, which is the huge pixels, but I picked the 4x6 photo page is what I've been using to work on right now. How do I do a B in the middle of the word? Okay, Amberly, I will do that. And yes, practice from now on is doing your Kegels. Amy, can you do something with or next to each other? What do you mean by that? You mean like the T's in your name? Is that what you're talking about? I can't tell. Well, I figure out what you're talking about. Amberly, I'm going to do your name because you have a B right in the middle of it. So O and R. Okay. Let me get to that. I'll do your last name, Amy, in just a second, because it has the double T's too, and that's something fun to play with. So let me do Amberly really quick, and then I will do you. Yeah. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start again. We're going to go back to the pencil. Now, names work really well for this, but you can practice with any words you want. You just need to just practice, and like, if you're not intending to use any of them, you can erase the pencil, or you don't need to. You can just see what you think it's going to look like. I mean, if you want to save time. I'm going to do a capital A for you, Amberly. But your name is also long, so... No, I want to connect them, though. That's what I want to do. This is going to be too big. I'm going to do the, the lowercase a. And I'm also knowing, is it with an E? Did I spell that right? That I did not leave myself enough space. This is going to be, okay, here we go. This is going to be this one is going to be a little bit of a workout. So, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a long name. My full first name is Cynthia, and that's a massive pain in my ass. So, okay, here we go. We're going to go around. We're going to keep it nice and tight. Do your Kegels, your tight lettering. Keep it close to save your ass the space. Here comes the B. We're going inside. And I noticed I put that little loop in the R too. I just really wanted to have a challenge this time around. Look at that. I'm already seeing one thing I don't like, which is how when I was working with this Y, oh God, here we go. Working around. We'll see how this looks. Oh my. I'm feeling the stress of being so, like, narrow here. Shit happens, man. You just got to go with it. Just keep going, because you can salvage it. And if you can't salvage it, that's fine. You just try the next thing. Let's find out. I'm really curious to see if I fucked this up completely or if it's just a little bit awkward in a couple of places. I'm hoping for the little bit awkward. All right. So here, I can tell you right now that, like, this is where you can see me hesitate a little bit. This Y right here, this could be a little bit more exaggerated. This is a little bit wider than it should be. This whole inside should be moved over just a skosh this direction. I'm nitpicking it, by the way. And my A just looks awkward as fuck over here. And like this, you can feel, it's like when you're rolling out a line of Play-Doh and you're going to sculpt it into a name, and like it's skinny in some spots and fatter in other spots, and it looks kind of off kilter. That's kind of how I'm feeling about this right now. But on the same note, you can see how the loops go around. So, and these are just things that the next time you do it, you look out for them. Like if I was going to, like, I would want to make sure to just try. But now you can see where the danger zones are. Like one thing I think I would do if I was going to do this over would be to not do this loop. You know? Another thing that I would do is make sure to have more. For the most part, it seemed to be okay, except for this E and this E, like right here. There wasn't enough space for me. It kind of got squished. So I would open those up a little bit. But I think I got stressed out because it's such a long name. You guys are hilarious. So yeah, so that is kind of the, let me go back into this. Hold on. Oh shit. I can't reverse out of any of that. Oh well, whatever. I'll worry about it later. All right. Okay. Now we're going to do Amy's last name. Yeah, see, Alexandria. Alex, I don't do that either. Like, I never letter my full name because Cynthia is just, there's just too much going on. Imagine me trying to do fancy hand lettering besides, like, the basic signing my name of my last name, like Guentert-Baldo. That's a big hell fucking no. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Amy, I'm going to do your last name, though, because I think your last name has a lot of kind of interesting points, including the O to the R. So I'm going to write out the cursive right now, keeping in mind that I've been running into some problems with some letters being too close together, so I need to think about that when I'm doing it. I keep fucking spitting on my iPad. If you ever see my iPad in person, don't touch it, because it has my cooties. So I'm going to do my T's. Make sure I spell this right. Okay, O-R-I-A. So let me show you how you form the letters. Now, I'm going to put the loop in, which means I'm exaggerating it, because I know that I'm going to be tracing it. So do you see how I did that? I kept the O closed. Normally when I make an O, I might like do that. You know, this right here would be probably how I would do it when I was lettering, but this is going to be a pain in the ass to trace. So instead, I closed the O, I made the loop bigger, I made this part of the R come up high, but I did not make the little loop-de-loop. Instead, I just made the R basically so that when I go around it, it's going to be a little easier. That's kind of what you're doing with the pencil part, is you're trying to, at the very least, like, anticipate the areas that might suck ass, if that makes sense. I'm checking the comments now because... All right, so we're going to move into tracing around it. Come on. Wipe my spit off because I'm gross. I just have a lisp. Whoops, I wanted to make this a little bit less opaque. There we go. I want to make sure you guys can see it, but I also want to make sure it doesn't distract me too much. Okay, guys, you're so welcome, Tanya. Okay, watch. This is where we're going to go. I'm going to go right into the crevasse there, the crack. Now, remember with a V, you want to add those little corners on the bottom because otherwise it might get mistaken for a U. So I'm working my way around, trying to make sure that inside of the R gets exaggerated just enough so that you recognize that it is an R when you look at it. Whoa, I hate when that happens. It's one of the things that pisses me off sometimes is that the pencil tends to like twitch and like not be awesome. And it makes me sad. And then for the inside of these two T's, I just trace it the same way I would have if I was going around the rest of it. Okay, now for the inside of the O, I'm tracing around it because it has that loop. You see how I've just traced around the insides of those to create that illusion of a loop right there? You'll see it better when I get rid of it. But you just want to try and remember to, I don't like that. PS, let's try this again. You're trying to just do the same. When you're doing the insides, you're trying to trace the same way you traced the outside. Like that's the thing you want to keep in mind. See? Now it's not perfect. I've got like some lumpiness going on. But if you were going to do the thing where you were connecting the letters or whatever, the kind of a loop on an O is one of the most fun places to do that. But you can see in a couple spots, like right here, this could have been smoothed out a little bit more, stuff like that. It takes practice. Doing bouncy, hold on. Alex says she's trying to do this and her sweaty hand from stress keeps touching your iPad and sticking and your lines go 90 degrees. Dude, I hate, sometimes, if those of you who have iPads, have you ever noticed sometimes when you're drawing a line, sometimes, I don't know what happens, but it goes like all like wacky like that. I hate that. I don't know what causes it, and it makes me so angry. You can get, Alex, they make like a glove that you can use to like help your hand glide. What I'll just do sometimes, because I have sweaty as fuck hands, no TMI or anything, I'll just kind of pull my sweatshirt up a little bit, and that helps. I also have my other, when I showed in the little iPad video that I wrecked the matte screen protector, I have the other one. I'm waiting for my husband to put it on, and I've heard that that helps a little bit with that too. Brittany says doing bouncy bubble cursive really helps make sure the letters aren't crowded. Absolutely. I think the biggest problem you run into that, though, is that some people are just as unconfident with bouncy as they are with bubble letters. For me, I don't like to do bouncy too much with this because it tends to fuck me up in these transitions that I tend to screw up on. So that's generally what I don't mess with it too much. But I also know exactly what you're talking about. It's you take practice. This all takes practice, and you'll get better at it the more you do it. But you have to remember that, especially with this style, it's all about moving slowly but smoothly. And then just remembering that you're not more than, like, but if bubble letters, like if you have handwriting and then you have the lettering that's kind of an addition to your handwriting. And then the next step from that is doing something like a fancy font, like a circus font or something, or bubble letters where you're drawing the letters, then this is even more so. If bubble lettering is a little bit not feeling intuitive because you're not writing a letter, you're drawing around the letter. If that already feels a little bit weird, then drawing around cursive, when cursive is already something that some people sometimes struggle with to connect things, realize that when you're doing this, you're doing something that people can, if you can even get a little bit close to getting to this point with just a little bit of practice, you're going to have people looking at you like you're a fucking wizard, Harry Potter, because they're going to be like, how the hell did you do that? So this isn't an easy thing to do, but it can be a really zen thing to do because you are just sort of tracing around things and just like, I'm making it work, So I highly recommend doing this when you're just watching TV or something because it really will mellow you out. Unless you get super stressed out, then maybe not. And then Jess was talking about cursive lowercase r is so tough. See, when I write my cursive lowercase r's like in bubble lettering, I love to like make them look like super exaggerated like that because I think that's adorable. But when you're tracing, sure, this would look cool, but this would look all like runty and shitty. Like you'll be up here like this. Like it could look cute, but it could also look like a deranged rabbit. So that's not something I recommend. When it comes to writing a cursive R in general, though, that's like, I find that trying to keep a certain proportion, this kind of cursive R is not one I generally do. I prefer the ones with the loop, but that's just, to me, it's almost like a difference between whether you make your printing A like this or whether you make it like this. Like adding that loop is just, I don't know, personal preference. But when it comes to tracing, I either like to exaggerate this top part so that it still looks like an R, or if I'm going to do a loop, make it big enough to trace, but not so big that it overwhelms the letter. So it's basically the letters are the same size, and I'm just replacing this little thing here with a loop. So I'm about to sign off. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to do the word love because it is Valentine's Day, even though I have specific feelings about Valentine's Day, though Jesse's making me a steak tonight. We're going to have steaks and drink sparkling wine and watch the new episode of Waco. And that's how we're spending our Valentine's Day. Oh, we're going to put flea medication on the cat. That is our Valentine's Day tonight. The Hunt for Red October has not arrived, though, so he may wind up lucking out tonight. I don't know yet, though. But I'm going to write the word love, and I am going to make sure that you guys can, even if, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the names up right quick. I'm going to hopefully get them up sometime by the weekend, but I will put the love PNG file up for you guys to utilize if you want to. And I will drop shadow it too. Let's just do a completed love, shall we? Whoops, that's not what I want. What the fuck does that even do? Oh, it's like a smudge tool. I haven't even used that yet. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to write the completed love, and you guys can do with it, what you will. So I'm going to make the L, but I'm going to move it over here because I need more space than that. So there's my inner word. Again, see how I closed the W up, the O up? Now we're going to turn this down. Turn down for what? We're going to add a little layer here. We're going to take this situation and go to this situation. Work my way around here. This is going to be a little bit wonky, but wonkiness is okay. I will accept wonkiness over not trying every day of the week. There's that. Now let's add another layer. Whoops, and bring it over here. Because I'm putting it behind it, because this is something I'm learning from the land of Final Cut, or of Procreate. I'm going to add a little bit of pink to it. I'm going to bring the opacity of this down in just a second. Bring this up. So this layer is behind the other layer so that it doesn't, the pink doesn't cross over the black. It's underneath the black. Now I'm not, if this is a bigger, I increase the brush size. So if I'm not careful, it'll go like that. So I got to try to avoid that. But I wanted to be able to add the drop shadow of a different color without it like coloring over the black and looking sloppy as fuck. I mean, it's okay if it's a little sloppy, but there's like sloppy and then there's fucking sloppy. I never know, Brittany, I saw your comment. I never know exactly how I want to do a V because I feel like this one, this is a little wider than I want it to be. But like, generally speaking, I feel like sometimes my V's look too pointy and sometimes they don't look pointy enough. And it's just a constant learning experience and experimenting. And then once I find something I really like, I do it for a while and then I hate it. I'm like, okay, I've had enough of that. I'm going to try something else. And that's fine. It's evolving. The more you practice something, you'll have it in your your toolbox of things that you can do, and you'll just get the hang of it. And once you figure something out or something that you like, even if you don't do it forever, once you've done it, you know how to do it, and you might be able to go back to it later if you decide that that's what you want to do. I feel like I'm like randomly spieling off about something that's really not that important, but it's okay. And so there, we just added the drop shadow on it. And now look at that. See? Okay. So that is this. I will make sure to have this file available as a transparent PNG in the group. And I'm going to fill in the, I'm going to use the paint bucket tool. So I'm going to change this back layer to black for right now because I want to show you something. No, we'll change it to orange. Whoops. Change it to orange. Okay, see, I'm just showing you. I'm not going to leave it like this, but just for contrast sake, this is something that it took forever for me to figure out. If you don't understand the paint bucket tool on Procreate, this is how it works. So I'm going to fill this up with white. Okay? You push your thing down on the, whoops. You push your pen down, your stylus down on the little circle up here, and then you drag it, and it fills it up. I had to find that. I was like, why the fuck can't I paint bucket tool this shit? So I just wanted you to know that. And why isn't that white? Motherfucker. I want white. Give me white. There we go. Close enough. Okay. I can't figure this shit out. Anyway. Trying to make it white, and there we go. That's the one I wanted. So I will put this out. Oh, it's filling everything up. I hate this. This is, no! Undo. 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 What am I doing here? What am I doing here? I am on the wrong layer. That's why I'm doing all this wrong. I gotta figure out how to fix this. I'm trying to figure out what I did wrong. There, did I fix it? I think I fixed it. No, I did not fix it. Shit. Okay. I don't want to even double click it white. I want nothing on this layer. I want this layer to be blank on the back side. Come on. There we go. Now it's transparent. That's what I wanted. I want this to be transparent. Okay, now I'm here. Now I'm going to take the white. Now I'm going to fill this in. That's what I wanted. Ah! Okay. Fucking Procreate. God damn it. Okay, guys. Yeah. Anyway, this is what I'm going to leave for you guys as a little gift today. And then I'll try and get the names up at some point, sometime this weekend, hopefully. I got to get going, though. Thank you so much for everything, you guys. I hope that this was helpful. And if it gave you something to start practicing, like grab whatever words work for you. Start trying this out because it'll once you start getting the hang of it, you're going to want to trace around everything because it just looks so cool once you start getting like, you know, your bearings. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And if you are doing anything for Valentine's Day, I hope that it goes well. And if you are ignoring Valentine's Day, then I hope your ignoring goes well. Have a good one, you guys.